In a matchup against a Kansas City Chiefs team whose defense is currently playing better than its offense, can the Packers, with an offense that is suddenly hitting its stride, score enough to stay with Patrick Mahomes? Chris Clark from Locked On Chiefs joins me on another Crossover Thursday to break down the matchups to answer that question and get you set for a primetime battle at Lambeau Field. Let's do it.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers, the number one Packers podcast on the internet. And the show for fans who know what happened, they want to know why and how. It is a crossover Thursday. Locked On Packers, Locked On Chiefs. Let us begin. Welcome inside another crossover edition, a Super Bowl I rematch, and Jordan Love's first start rematch. Locked On Packers, Locked On Chiefs. Today's crossover Thursday brought to you by our friends at PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase Locked On NFL for a first deposit match up to $100. I'm Peter Bukowski, host of Locked On Packers, joined by Chris Clark, one of the hosts of Locked On Chiefs. And Chris, we have been robbed of the Rodgers-Mahomes matchup for their entire careers because in 2019, it was Mahomes who was hurt. In 2021, Aaron Rodgers famously or infamously got COVID for that week, and Jordan Love made his first NFL start. And now, of course, Aaron Rodgers pretending to come back for the New York Jets. A totally different set of circumstances that we don't have to talk about. But a lot has changed. Andy Reid said a lot has changed for Jordan Love. It seems like a lot has changed for Patrick Mahomes too since then. Tyreek Hill out the door, and now there's this cavalcade of new and developing receivers. I wanted to ask you about this offense because that seems like the big story here. The defense has been playing great all year, and the offense is in still figure it out mode. And this game is going to be in December. That seems like late in the season to still be trying to figure it out. What's been going on?
Inconsistencies. There's been three big problems: drops, penalties, and turnovers. And you can't win games.
Sounds familiar to Green Bay, by the way.
Yeah, you can't win games if you have that. You just can't. 2 or 3 drops a game doesn't sound like a ton, but you have to look at when those drops happen. A lot of the Chiefs drops have been on third downs, which kill drives. You have that situation. You have turnovers that have killed drives, that have killed, scoring chances when you should be putting up a touchdown and you don't even get any points in the red zone. That's a problem. They did that twice 2 weeks ago. So, that was a problem then against the Eagles. There's just lots of problems, and it's inconsistencies for the wide receivers. Mahomes has been pretty consistent, though he is still struggling at times, trying to take the deep shot, trying to be aggressive.
Yeah.
And that causes problems at times. And we've been talking about that on the podcast all year, is that, it's great to take deep shots if you can hit some of them, but it's still great to take deep shots even if you don't hit some of them.
Yeah.
But the problem is you have to choose when you take them. And too many times there's been situations where it's been like 3rd and 9, 3rd and 14, 3rd and 3 even, and you're taking a deep shot 40 yards down the field. That's not really when you want to take those shots. I
had a stat. I had a stat on the show yesterday, Chris. This blew my mind. I'm going to throw it at you. I'm sure you've seen some of these numbers. So whatever you think of Pro Football Focus, it's just one metric, one tool in the toolbox. Right. Patrick Mahomes, out of 40 qualifying QBs on throws over 20 yards, 40. He is 34th in passing grade out of 40. And only Tommy DeVito, yes, that Tommy DeVito has a higher rate of turnover-worthy plays on those throws. That's the part, Chris, that I just, he on those throws has always been able to seemingly throw away from the defense. And I don't know how much of that is Tyreek Hill and how much of that is trusting where his guys are going to be. Sammy Watkins for a time, right? He is putting the ball in harm's way on those deep throws more than we've seen. And that to me is the part that's jarring. Like I get missing some deep shots. We've been talking about this all year with Jordan Love. This has been a story on my podcast too. But it's been those moments where you're like, okay, you've got this big deep cross. He just misses it. And I'm just sort of like, man, that's just not what I'm used to seeing. But he can still do all of the high level stuff that you want. He's just not doing it quite as often.
Is he missing it, or is the wide receiver not in the right place?
And that's the other thing that we don't know unless we're in those meeting rooms.
Right. And I think that's one of the bigger problems is that you see situations, MVS has had several of them this season where he's not running the right route, or Justin Watson's not running the right route, or they're running the right route, but they're not running it as Mahomes would expect. A great example of that is 2 weeks ago, Watson's running a deep, a 9 route basically, and he gets too far inside instead of running to the outside and, where the ball was going to go. And when you're talking 40 yards down the field, that extra 3 or 4 yards you're not expecting. Yeah. Causes an issue, and you're not able to, make a connection there. And that's not a turnover worthy play, maybe, but it still gives you situations where you can't complete plays. You can't make plays downfield, and that becomes a problem.
Yeah, there's been a lot of that in Green Bay, or at least there was for a time. Over the last month, the Packers have really done a good job of giving Jordan Love opportunities to throw the ball down the field without having to just throw like a 9 route. Like you mentioned, the Watson, like those things, I think not everyone can throw those rail shot go balls. Aaron Rodgers spoiled Packer fans by being the best I've ever seen throwing accurately down the field on the outside the numbers. It's really hard to do. And then you have to do more deep overs. You have to throw more corners. Like Patrick Mahomes I've never seen a guy who can throw corner routes or post corner routes like him. He is unbelievable at it, but you also have to have guys who can run it. And so this finding this balance is something that both of these teams have really had to figure out. And so it seems like the Packers have done that a little bit. We'll see who's healthy this week. Dontavian Wicks back at practice. He's been really, really good, especially as a day 3 rookie for the Packers. I don't know if you saw this. Mina Kimes tweeted that she would have loved to have seen Jaden Reed or Dontavian Wicks or Romeo Doubs or Christian Watson on the Chiefs because how the offense look. If they did, they have found a way to put this all together. When it has worked, what has worked for them?
When it has worked, Kansas City's gotten the ball to Rashee Rice. They found ways to get the ball to Rashee Rice. They found ways to get people open and get Travis Kelce open enough. Obviously, he's not a wide receiver, but he's basically a default wide receiver one for the Chiefs, has been for years. But the question is can they get him open enough? I mean, teams have started doubling him. They're not going to allow him to get open. I don't know what the Raiders were doing last week. They certainly didn't make it look like they were trying to double him like most teams have lately.
Isn't that always the question when the Chiefs play the Raiders? It's sort of like,
true.
What was Las Vegas's plan exactly on this?
Yeah. Well, and the crazy thing is if you go back several weeks, they played the Denver Broncos, and I think Kelce had like 150 yards or 170 yards or something like that. And then a couple weeks later, I think he gets 14. So teams have the ability to make changes. So we'll see with whether the Raiders do that later, but it's getting the right people involved. It's getting Rashee Rice running different routes, getting him to where he's the guy that's getting the high targets at the wide receiver group, not Justin Watson, who is very limited in his role and what he's able to do. Honestly, I think part of it also is that they've had 8 wide receivers they've been trying to play most of the season, and you can't have that many guys trying to get snaps. You're not going to get consistency.
Where's the running game been in all of this? Because over the last couple of years, and I think we saw it at times last year, this has been a Packers problem. This is why this is like there are a lot of parallels in these two offenses. That's why I keep asking. Like the run game was supposed to be something that the Chiefs could lean on. It was supposed to be something that the Packers could lean on. The Packers have not been able to. Injuries to Aaron Jones, flux along the offensive line, and just like frankly not the kind of downhill offensive line that say the Chiefs have shown they can be when they want to be at times. But why haven't they been able to lean on that a little bit more this season?
Andy Reid. I hate making that call.
No, that's been true since Philly. That's been true since Philadelphia.
Yeah, that's the reality is they, go back to the Philly game. They ran for 150 yards in the first half or something ridiculous. I don't remember the exact yardage, but Philly was the best run defense. And then they only had like 5 or 6 runs in the second half. A complete change in play calling of looking at what's working and what's not. And just getting
Joe Barry would love the Chiefs to do that this week. Just only run in the first half. Do not run at all in the second half.
I'm sure he would. And I think most teams would. Pacheco's been effective, and you start talking about the running game, and you have to talk also about Mahomes and his ability to scramble. I know that's not running game specifically, but it gets it to the point where I think Andy Reid looks at it as a run because it happens 3 or 4 times a game, and it's getting him usually 25, 30 yards, 40 yards down the field, depending on the play. So I think that's part of what it is. The frustrating thing for Kansas City, obviously, is like you said, where does it go? And it's Andy Reid making the play calls. And, part of the other problem is probably that they've had problems with turnovers in the second half and penalties in the second half where you get to a point where you don't feel like you can run the ball. So
I was going to
may
ask
play
you about
into
the
it
second
too.
half stuff because they're like 19th in EPA per play in the second half of these games. They're kind of the anti-Packers in that way. Like they'll come out
Yep.
and they'll look good. And then in the second half, it's like, did they go to sleep? What happened?
Well, did you see last week's game where they basically went to sleep the first quarter?
Yeah. Well, that was a weird version of this team, right? That was not the version
Yeah.
we'd seen most of the season.
No, and I think, like I said, I think the big thing is turnovers, drops, and penalties. And I hate going back to the same well, but that's really what it is. If you go look at the games, it's penalties that come at horrid times. It's turnovers in the red zone where you're getting ready to score in the second half and you got the ball in the red zone and you turn it over twice. And by your 2 best players on offense, even. Mahomes and Kelsey both had a turnover against the Eagles. And then you look at the drops. You have a 3rd and 4 with Justin Watson late in the game against the Eagles where they probably have a chance to maybe score, and it goes right through his hands. And you can't have that.
MVS at the end of the game. Well, Packer fans have seen that play a dozen times.
Yep. It's hard.
This is for both of these teams. And now the Chiefs are a better team and have been a better team, and they have an all-world, all-time quarterback. So it's a little bit different. But we're both seeing that when you're an inconsistent team, you can look really good for a quarter or a half or even a game, but sustaining that is hard. And that has been a problem for both of these teams to different degrees. Let's be very clear, different degrees. The Chiefs are an 8-3 team for a reason, and the Packers are a 5-6 team for a reason. We're going to talk about more of those reasons coming up just a second here on our Locked On Packers, Locked On Chiefs crossover Thursday. Today's crossover Thursday is brought to you by our friends at PrizePicks. It's daily fantasy sports made easy. And Chris, one of the things that I love right now is because we have basketball, I can put the basketball stuff with the football stuff. So I can create a lineup with Damian Lillard and Giannis Antetokounmpo and Christian Watson and Jordan Love if I want to. All I have to do is decide if I think they're going to produce more or less than the statistical threshold that PrizePicks decides. That's all I have to do. And I can win up to 25 times my money. I can turn $10 into 250 in just a few taps. That's why PrizePicks is so fun. Plus, they have all of these great promotions. Taco Tuesday, for example, discounted projections, all kinds of fun stuff. PrizePicks is daily fantasy. It's made easy. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL with the code LockedOnNFL to get that first deposit match. Don't leave money on the table. Up to $100. It's daily fantasy sports made easy. That is PrizePicks. And thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers and Locked On Chiefs their first listen every day. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today. It's here for 24/7 coverage of the top stories in sports with the local experts of Locked On, like Chris, like me, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national 24/7 sports streaming network. Chris, one of the things that I was digging into when I was looking at the matchups for this game was I was looking at the roster for the Chiefs on defense in particular and going, all right, Chris Jones, awesome. Trent McDuffie playing like one of the best slot corners in the league this season, really, really ascending as a young player. I've always thought Justin Reid was an underrated player. L'Jarius Sneed, good player. Other than that, like this just doesn't profile as a top 10 kind of defense to me based on personnel, but they are, and they've been one of the best passing defenses in particular in the league all season. Can Can you tell me how they're doing it? Because it just like they just play really well. I don't get it. They're just good. I maybe as someone who covers the Packers, like a well-coached defense is a foreign thing to me. Maybe I'm just like I've been blue pilled by Joe Barry.
What I will say is that you have to look at the scheme. I think that's
Yeah.
a lot of where this comes from. I think
Yeah.
Steve
Coaching
Spagnuolo has
matters.
been playing. He's doing fantastic as a coordinator. And I think one of the big things that if you go back and look at seasons past in 21 and 22, the Chiefs defense got better as the year went on. And a lot of that was because Spagnuolo basically experimented the first 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, maybe even 10 games, trying to figure out what he could do with the players he had. This year, he didn't have to do that. He knew what he had. He knew how they were going to play. He knew he was able to do all of that, and it worked out well for him. And at this point, I'm not going to say it's all on Spagnuolo, but a lot of it is. I mean, he's got them playing very well, but you have to look at it also of adding a guy like Charles Omenihu, who he's been able to give them pass rush. Add a guy like Drew Tranquil, who can play any linebacker position, who's been able to step in for an injured Nick Bolton. You have that situation. And L'Jarius Sneed has been playing fantastic. He had a rough first quarter, maybe first half against the Raiders, but he didn't allow a single target or catch in the second half against the Raiders against Devontae Adams. And he was the guy guarding him most of the time. You talk about a guy in Trent McDuffie, he's been playing fantastic as well. So overall, this defense has just been looking better and better each week.
Yeah, and one of the things that they have always been able to do is they will heat you up. They will bring pressure. They will bring exotic pressure. But what has been cool about this team, unless you're playing them, is they don't have to. They don't have to bring extra bodies to get after you because Chris Jones is that good, because George Karlaftis is a really nice player. I was a big fan of Felix Anudike-Uzomah coming out of college. I know he's been inconsistent. He's a rookie. That's going to happen. But there was that quote. I think you can correct me if I'm fumbling the details, but it was that at the end of last season, they win the Super Bowl and Jalen Watson says, like, we were still learning the defense. Imagine how good we can be when we know it. And it seems like we're seeing that play out right now, that everyone plays on a string. They play really disciplined. The one place that's not true, Chris, and I want to ask you about is the run game. This is the 27th ranked run defense by DVOA this season. The Broncos were able to win a game because they said, we're going to play big and we're going to play big boy football. And we're going to keep your sub packages off the field. We're going to stay out of 3rd and longs, something the Eagles could not do. They were in 3rd and long that entire game.
Right.
And that was the only time that a team has scored over 21 points on this Chiefs defense. So if the Packers take that tack, if they say, okay, 2 tight ends, they lead the league in 12 personnel this season. We're not going to let you if Trent McDuffie is going to be on the field, he's going to have to play on the boundary. And we're going to get big guys against big guys and run it down your throat. What is Kansas City going to do? And how can they counter?
That's a big question mark. And I think that's a big problem that they have on defense. I won't say it's a huge problem. I'll say it's a big problem. And the difference to me is Tranquil's been playing out of his mind. He's been one of the best pickups that they could have had for $3 million, especially for what they're paying him, like $3 million a season. Mike Edwards has been great on the back end as well. The problem is you get in inconsistencies. You talk about last week. I think they allowed 2 yards a carry after the big run to Jacobs last week. And that was a couple of guys getting, pushed inside that probably shouldn't have. FAU, I don't think, played after that snap when Jacobs had that long run. So part of it is inconsistency, but I think you're also missing Nick Bolton. He is the leader of this. He is the leader of this defense. He is the middle linebacker that is supposed to be plugged in there and playing. Now, I will say it's possible, although I don't expect it. He is returning to practice today, so his 21-day window is opening. I don't expect him to play on Sunday. I could be wrong. We'll see. Obviously, we're recording a little bit earlier in the week than we would actually be able to tell you. But my guess is he's probably ready for the game against Buffalo. But again, that's just a guess. So I think they're missing Nick Bolton. I think that's caused them, when it comes to running the ball. The rest of it is just, it's scheme. They don't have great run defenders in the middle of the defense. I mean, Nadi's been good, but he hasn't been great. Chris Jones isn't a run defender. They're set up to get after the pass. Running is really a secondary thing in this defense.
Yeah, I think that's going to be what you're going to see from the Packers is heavy personnel, play action. We saw them kill the Lions last week on play action. Now they did it from under center and from the gun. like if Jaden Reed doesn't play, I don't know how much from the gun they're going to want to play. Even if Jaden Reed does play, I don't know how much from the gun they're going to want to play, because it's going to be all so focused on trying to stop this pass rush and run the ball, stay in favorable down and distances. I think there's two things that I've been saying all week, Chris, that I think the Packers have to be able to do. They have to be able to protect Jordan Love, Chiefs #1 in adjusted sack rate this season. Whether they have to blitz or not, the Chiefs are going to be able to put pressure on Jordan Love. So how often and when? Hopefully it's not on those third and manageables. It's only on the third and really longs where you're probably not going to make them anyway. And then it's tackling. This is something that we talked about on the show earlier the week. No quarterback has gotten more yards after catch on throws behind the line of scrimmage, which just seems crazy. Like in all the things that Mahomes can do, to also have an offense where he can throw the ball behind the line of scrimmage and create out of it seems unfair, Chris. Frankly, I don't appreciate it. But that's the truth of this season for the Chiefs, is they've been able to manufacture from behind the line of scrimmage on screens, on these package plays that they have, where it looks like they're going to throw a screen one way and they come back and run it the other way. That's something the Packers love to do as well. So, tackle, protect, and tackle. It seems pretty silly to make it that simple, but I think that's the truth for Green Bay, because there is a stylistic thing that I think the Packers, they want to play some of these two tight end sets and play big and then go play action. And I think that's where defensively is the one place you can attack this defense. So I don't know. We'll see like how that ends up shaking out. Is there a place on this Packers team offensively in particular where you look at it and you go, this is the place where either you think they will attack Kansas City or you would be most worried about them attacking Kansas City?
To be clear, are you asking the Packers defense on the Chiefs offense, or
Sorry, no, the Packers offense on this Chiefs defense, which is awesome, by the way. Like they're really good. I think there are some ways that the Packers can attack it, just stylistically.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they try to attack using the run. The question is can they get it to where you're in 3rd and 5 and 3rd and 6 versus 3rd and 8 and 3rd and 9.
Right.
And you go back to the Philly game and you made a great point. They were in long distances, and where it becomes an even bigger issue for Philly is if you keep them out of like 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, they're not able to do their tush push.
Right.
And that becomes a huge deal for them. If you can keep them out of that situation, you give yourself a chance to stop them on 3rd down and not give them a chance to go for it on 4th down again. So, for me, it's a question of, can they attack Kansas City? Can they run the ball in Kansas City? If they can run the ball in Kansas City, that opens up things like you talked about. I'm a big proponent of the question of, can Kansas City get off to a quick lead? If they get off to a quick lead, that's a different story. It's going to take away the run game a little bit.
Yeah, this was something that I talked about a lot during the Aaron Rodgers era, was that Aaron Rodgers was the best run defense that the Packers could have had. Because if you thought that you had to score 30 to win these games, it became a lot harder to stay committed to the run. And I think, if they go up 10-0, Matt LaFleur is going to have to stay really, really disciplined here. I pulled up the 3rd down numbers from that Philly game yesterday because I was just going through it and I wanted to see them, and I went back and watched some of those plays. This is wild. So the Philly converts 3 of 11 on 3rd down in this game. One of them was a kneel, so technically not really a conversion.
Right.
3rd and 6, sack. 3rd and 14, sack. 3rd and 15, sack. 3rd and 7, tackle for loss on a QB run, but they called it a tackle for loss, not a sack. 3rd and 1, TFL. It was a -3, DeAndre Swift. 3rd and 10, they have a scramble, but don't pick it up. And 3rd and 23, they check the ball down. That is, you can't win living in 3rd and 15, 3rd and 10, 3rd and 23. Like that's just anytime you see bad 3rd down numbers, it speaks to bad 1st down numbers and 2nd down numbers. If you're bad on early downs, it will screw you on 3rd downs.
That's a huge thing that I've been talking about all season. I've been tracking Kansas City's 3rd down play on offense specifically the entire season. And it's always a question of, can they get into 3rd and manageable? And the Achilles heel of this team, funny enough, is 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3. But if they can still get in those situations, they're usually going to be in a pretty good situation to convert. But the problem is they get into situations where it's 3rd and 15, 3rd and 20, 3rd and 10. I mean, if you do that consistently without the wide receivers that they don't have this season, you're not going to convert most of the time. So that's really slowed their offense down.
Yeah, the reason the Packers played Patrick Mahomes so well the first time these two teams played with Jordan Love back in 2021, understanding different personnel, but it's the same defensive coordinator, and it's some of the same issues we've seen. When you put a roof on it for Patrick Mahomes and you don't let them create explosives, can they go 10 plays, 12 plays, 14 plays, 80 yards and score touchdowns? And I think that's going to be the approach for the Packers. The problem for the Packers is like, okay, let's say you hold them to 20 points. Can you get to 20? I don't know. We'll see.
Defense, that's going to be a big question.
Not a lot of teams have, and it would be quite the feat if this team did it. We'll talk about that coming up in just a second here on Locked On Packers. Locked On Chiefs, a crossover Thursday. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at DoorDash. I don't know about you, Chris. DoorDash, one of my most valuable resources on game day is DoorDash, because I got a lot to do. You and I both have a lot to do on game day, trying to watch these games, take notes, do our shows, create our content, all that good stuff. So it's really easy to say, yeah, let's get pizza. Let's get some wings. Let's get some burgers. And DoorDash is always going to deliver. My MVP on game day. Okay, maybe second. My wife is first, and then DoorDash pretty close after that. Get 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter code LOCKED23. That's 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order downloading the DoorDash app with the code LOCKED23. This is subject to change and terms do apply. Today's episode also brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. This game opened, the Chiefs favored by 7 points at Lambeau Field. It is down to 6 points at Lambeau Field. And so some interesting opportunities for you to make a little money if you have a lean on that. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. Not a lot of value on the money line to bet the Chiefs, but they're pretty heavy favorites. It'd be a pretty great way to win $150 in bonus bets. If you bet on the Chiefs in this one, you're getting good odds to get that money, even if to win your bet, you're not going to win a lot off the bet. But the app is easy to use, a wide range of betting options, spreads, player props, over-unders, teasers, parlays, all kinds of fun stuff over at FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season's playoff push. That's where we are, baby. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. And thanks for everyone making Locked On Packers or Locked On Chiefs your first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. Locked On has launched the first ever national 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube for sports. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, Chris, as we finish up here, I teased it a little bit coming out of break. Can the Packers score enough? At its heart, any game comes down to one thing. Can one team score enough points to beat the other team? You just have to score one more than the other guy. It seems likely that the Chiefs will score more than the Packers. That's why the spread is what it is. It's why the records are what they are. So all that being said, you don't need to hard sell me on it, because this is the expected outcome. What is the path to victory? What do the Chiefs need to do to win this game?
Goes back to what I said before. Don't turn the ball over. Don't get stupid penalties. If they can do that, I think that they should be able to win this game. And it's nothing against the Packers. I just think that they're a better team right now. I do think that they have problems at wide receiver. They have problems being consistent on offense, and that can cause issues. I do think that they started to maybe figure some stuff out last week. And I think that moving forward, if they did, and if they're going to continue to get the ball to Rashee Rice, I think they're going to be in a pretty good position to win. So to me, it's, don't turn the ball over, get the ball to Rashee Rice, get him, 8, 9, 10 targets like he did last week. I think you've got to be in a good position.
Do we know for sure if Taylor Swift is going to be there? Do we know?
We don't, but it does sound like she came back to Kansas City. Her tour is over for right now until February. So I think she's probably going to be there, would be my guess. but I don't know that for a fact. The
There is
question
a
I have to
chance.
you is, what is the weather
What I
like?
was going to say is there is a chance that we don't know, but Jonathan Owens, who's probably going to start at safety for the Packers in this game, is married to Simone Biles. So we could have Taylor Swift and Simone Biles maybe in a box together, Chris, at Lambeau Field. Just preparing you now. There's going to be a lot of tweets. There's going to be a lot of tweets, a lot of conversation about it. I want to go back to this Broncos Chiefs game as we talk about this, because the Broncos quietly played the Chiefs pretty tough that first game. I think you and I talked about that Chiefs game on Locked On Sports today when we did that. It was one of those like the ugly games the Chiefs win by 15 because that's what good teams do. But the Broncos, they were really efficient in the red zone. They ran the ball a lot, even if they weren't great at it. 40 carries, $153, still averaged less than 4 yards. But it was the turnovers. And that's the thing. So if we're going to create a roadmap, the Packers have to be able to run the ball. They have to be willing to stay committed to running the ball. And they have to do the thing that they did last week against the Lions. And that is stay with this run game. Can A.J. Dillon play in this game? We're going to see. Is Aaron Jones going to play in this game? We're going to see. And I think that getting those running game players on track, it helps your play action game just because you can stay in favorable down and distances to create those play action opportunities. I think this is going to be a really good game. It will be the best test defensively the Packers have faced so far this season. I think the Packers are going to cover the 6. I feel better about 6.5. Like if I could, I wish I would have gotten it 6.5. But I think they will cover the 6. I think this will be a sort of like 24-20 kind of game where the Chiefs win, but the Packers acquit themselves well against the defending Super Bowl champions. What do you think of that?
I have no problems with it. My big question is what Kansas City team is going to show up on Sunday. And I hate saying it that way, but if they're consistent and they're able to come out and they're actually able to move the ball in the first quarter and get their offense kind of going in the right direction, I think that this could be a game that maybe they win a little bit bigger. Maybe it's 27-14. Maybe it's 31-17. I will say this. I don't see Green Bay, especially with the injuries that they have with Aaron Jones and maybe even Dillon as well. I don't see Green Bay continuously being able to run the ball and being able to score touchdowns, running the ball consistently enough to score over 24 points or 20 points, really. I don't think that they get to 20. That's my personal opinion. But I do think Kansas City is going to score more than that. I can't see it happening 2 games within a month of each other that they're going to allow somebody to run the ball on them like that. But that's the big question. And weather could play a huge factor. I mean, it's Green Bay, so we'll see.
Yeah, and the weather is constantly changing. So that's the other part of this.
Yep.
It would be great. Wouldn't it be great if we got a snow game? Like that would just be like Packers Chiefs. It feels appropriate that we would get a game like that. So
I'll warn you, Mahomes says he's a snow game guy. He liked playing in the snow in Denver, so I will tell
that's
you.
Great. We got no snow in the forecast currently, but they're expecting the game time weather in that like 35 kind of range. It will probably go down as the game goes on. So we could be talking about sub 32 kind of temperatures. Jordan Love's first real taste of that as a starter. So something maybe to think about there as well. All right, Chris. Locked On Packers, Locked On Chiefs, another crossover edition. We did it. We'll be back with everybody on Friday to get you set for this primetime matchup against 2 of the most storied franchises in certainly the modern NFL's landscape. I can't wait. Chris, is always fun, man. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. It's been great.
All right. Thanks to Chris for joining us here on a crossover Thursday. Back tomorrow to get you set for Packers Chiefs. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. X. Are we doing X? We're doing Twitter. Anywhere you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers. Of course, you will find us on YouTube as well. And anytime you want to come hang out with us live, like we will be on Sunday night after the game, after maybe a Packers win, we'll see. You can do that. Go subscribe to our YouTube page so you can stay Locked On Packers.